Hello and welcome everybody to the latest edition of the Buy Round. I'm your host, James Graham. Now, a couple of casualties. No Brandon Smith. Hopefully he'll be back with us later this week. And Charlie White, in case you didn't know it, he actually completed the City to Surf 14 point something Ks. He went pretty well, but under extreme fatigue. He's unable to join us. But
he didn't look fatigued at the pub afterwards, Jimmy. He looked as though he was quite up on his toes, quite happy.
That's the recovery session, isn't it? Yeah, but like usually you feel the effects the day after.
Okay.
Yeah, we've all fell into that trap. Yeah, DOMS, yes, yeah. We've all fell into that trap. No, I'll just push through this with a few beers and then that soreness the next day. So Charlie, unable, missing in action, but we've got Brent Read, one of the game's leading journalists here, joining us on the show.
Great to be here.
To talk all things NRL, Rugby League. Really, before we get into the results and a few of the stories and the ramifications from those results, we were just talking around, predictions for the top eight. Is Manly season's done? The Warriors, are they a guarantee? Because not that long ago, we all thought the top four was locked. Yeah. The Raiders, Storm, Bulldogs and the Warriors. That has been proven to be untrue. And a number of different stories along the way that we thought Penrith were going to struggle to make the eight. That was the talk of, they're going to have to do, they're going to have to win 10 from 14 to make the finals. And they've not just done that, they've exceeded. They've got three big challenges up ahead, but wow, what a turnaround from them. But we're starting to see the finals sort of take some shape. Are you, first on Manly, are you willing to put a line through them after their defeat in the nation's capital?
No, Jimmy, I don't think they're gone at all. I think they've got a good draw. They've got a good run home. They play the Dolphins, I think, in a fortnight. I think that's a huge game. Look, they've got to win this week. They've got the Tigers this week, win that, beat the Dolphins the week after, and I think they're still in the mix. And, there's some, like you mentioned the Warriors, Jimmy. I mean, they've got massive injury problems. They look really vulnerable at the moment. They've slipped out the top four. I don't know where their next win's coming from.
Because they're on 11 wins as it stands now.
They got a couple of games at home, which are crucial, but as you can see from what we've seen lately, they're no guarantee to win at home either. So there's some sides in that top eight who are a bit vulnerable at the moment. I reckon, look, it's going to be hard for Manly. No Jake, obviously. He's going to miss this week at least. And they've got some injuries. And Jake's hurts them not just from a leadership perspective, but they're also missing a lot of middle forwards at the moment, Manly. So it hurts him in that respect. But I'm not ready to put a line through him yet.
I guess that's the smart move. Not putting a line through them yet, because we see, like you say, all it will take is those 2 wins, and they're back in the frame. The Roosters have got some tough fixtures, so although they did a demolition job on the Dolphins, they've still got some big challenges.
I would have said the Dolphins were laid down as theirs. Then you see the way they played at the weekend, you go, well, they're no certainties either. I mean, they got destroyed, Jimmy. That was men against boys stuff.
Yeah, I like the confrontation side of that game. I thought the referees, the match official handled that really well. For me, jumping ahead and looking at the race for that, what I think is the final spot in the eight, but you're right, the Warriors are no guarantees. It's hard to see where their next win comes from. They're probably going to need at least 2 to solidify a spot there. Yep. It could, ultimately, the Raiders could decide who makes the eight with their last regular season fixture is the Dolphins in Brisbane on the Sunday of round 27. Now, if you're Ricky Stewart and the Canberra Raiders, if you're guaranteed a top 2 finish, and I'm willing to disregard the minor premiership, I think if you're guaranteed a top 2 finish, you are within your rights to rest a number of your key players going into week 1 of finals.
It's not just them though, Jimmy. Also, Brisbane play Melbourne last round as well.
Yeah.
So if Melbourne are top 2, traditionally they have rested players in the last round. And Brisbane, with their injury problems, again, they might need to win the last round as well. So I think both those sides, if Canberra and Melbourne are locked in top two, you got to rest players.
I think the fact that Melbourne played the Broncos on the Thursday of that round 27, that might put them, that they won't be secure of a top two spot up until that result. That result might secure it, but I've got a feeling it might not be cemented until
unless the Doggies lose a couple on the run home.
Yeah, so we don't quite know, but even the Sharks, I looked at them last week and the number of wins that they were on and their draw to finish the season, and we thought, well, they're a bit of a smoky for the top four, and they capitulated.
Yeah.
And even this time of year, just how interesting it gets, and the NRL is such a magnificent competition where anyone can beat anyone on their day, but the psychological effect of playing for something and playing with no real consequence of loss, it makes for fascinating fixtures at this stage in the season. The Dragons, they've taken a couple of big scalps, and part of that, I believe, is due to the fact that they are safe in the knowledge they're not playing finals, and the Sharks with a top four spot. Boys, we're playing for a top four spot, and what that does to you, a little bit of weather, and you're not. I think it's hard to say if you're complacent, but if you're a Sharks player and you see that Dragons team come out with, a decent injury list, I think 2 debutants, you can't help but fall into the trap and think we've just got to do the do here.
It's folly against Dragons. We've seen this year they've been competitive all year, Jimmy. I mean, they've lost so many close games, and it's interesting because a lot of those sides that we have considered, and it's probably the wrong term, easy beats for a lot of the year. Parramatta's started to turn the corner. Souths are getting players back. I mean, Souths are going to have a huge influence over the 8. I think they play the Roosters and a couple of other teams.
They play Roosters last game, yeah.
And they're going to have Latrell. They've obviously got Latrell back. They'll have Cody back. They'll have potentially Cam Murray back. They're going to be a completely different football team over the next month. So you look at some of those teams that as I said, you considered... as I said, easy beats, or we
just need to
turn up and we win the footy game.
Yeah,
it's not like that at the moment anymore. It's not going to be like that for the next month, and that's why I think it's going to be really interesting to see how it unfolds, because a lot of those teams that are in the top 4, top 8 are playing some of those teams, and we thought, well, they're just going to roll through them, but I don't think you're going to roll through them.
And all of a sudden, that those teams have that freedom of consequence.
Yes.
They sort of know they're not going to get the spoon, they're not going to make the 8.
They can just have a free hit, basically.
Yeah, and look, when you're in the position of that, we can understand how that plays out. But in a position like the team, like the Sharks were in on the weekend, maybe they fell into a little bit of a trap. But if you try and fix that on the go, the harder you work, the more mistakes that you make, the more that the Dragons' confidence and belief grows, and that energy that they play with, and everyone's cheering every knock on. It is a horrible place to be when you go, this is 2 points that we should have had. Look what it could have done to us. And it can actually send you down a bit of a detrimental thinking spiral of if-onlys, which often happens for a lot of the teams at the end of the year.
Can you remember a time, I reckon, the top 8's got so many sides that are so unconvincing? Like, I would even say Melbourne, who've been, obviously great all year, but they've had moments where you go, that's so unlike Melbourne. They're not, they haven't completely convinced me yet that they're an invincible football team. Canberra's probably in the one, but Canberra's had some moments in recent weeks. There's all these sides in the top 8 who are, you'd say Penrith at the moment, obviously the form team, 9 wins in a row or whatever, and looking like the Penrith of previous years. But aside from them, every side at some point has seemed to have a little chink in their armour, or something that makes you think, that leaves you thinking they're not that convincing. I'm not convinced about that.
And it's absolutely great for the competition. Yeah. I think that's why if Penrith had finished in the bottom half of the 8, it's ripe for that bit of history to be rewritten.
I'll put a line through it, Jimmy. Can't do it.
But I think this year in particular, because of the fragility of a lot of the sides and the fact that the Raiders are almost the new kids on the block, and the Bulldogs, they're in the top. They're the new kids on the block. Penrith are going to have had to do a lot of work, and maybe that will catch up them. And like you say, Melbourne Storm, far from convincing. I still think maybe them on their day, on paper, but then
we've seen what games they've played, but they've played 20 or 30 minutes of football, and it's been untouchable, and they just haven't put it together for 80 minutes yet. And I think maybe it's going to take the finals, the big games for them to do that. But I've said since the season started, Jimmy, the team that beats Melbourne will win the comp, and I still believe that. I think Melbourne will make the grand final. And if you want to win the grand final, if you want to win the premiership, you're going to have to beat Melbourne on the big stage. I think it's been destined to go that way all season.
Well, unless someone else does your dirty work for you.
Well, yeah.
And one of those teams could be Penrith, but then ultimately you'd have to beat Penrith.
Yes.
That's a good segue, actually, because we were talking yesterday on radio about the Penrith Panthers. And look, I don't like to use the word fear. I've been doing a lot of thinking about the Panthers and what they've achieved this year, and how their brilliance, their greatness, is causing headaches at NRL HQ. Because if this wasn't the year to stop them, then I don't know what is. Because for me now, I think they're looming as Premiership favourites, and this next 3 weeks. I could end up doubling down on that, but let's look ahead at let's look ahead to next year. There's something different about next year in terms of the Panthers and what they've built. They don't lose any player of significance or players of significance. Blaze Talangi, McLean, Tango, they all get a little bit better. So, what if this was supposed to be the year they fell and you know the decline? Well, if that's proved incorrect, we could be looking at, we talk of 5 in a row, but you well, not even in a row, but you throw in a couple of injuries, but they've got the next 3 seasons ahead. So this year they're going to likely be top 4, but then you look to 26, 27, 28. They've got that ultimately pretty much boxed off, and especially when you throw in the fact that 2 new teams are coming into the competition, which spreads the talent out even more. I can't see Nathan Cleary, and obviously he'll be a lot older by then, but he's 27 now. Isaiah Yeo, Dylan Edwards, like the cornerstone of their team, your Liam Martins, your Leotas, your Lindsay Smith, who's still got time to grow into his game. It's going to be difficult for Penrith to be not just knocked off, but we could be looking in serious territory of 7 from 10 premierships, of 8 from 11. These numbers are not beyond the realms of possibility.
Well, if Nathan Cleary's at number 7, Jimmy, they're going to be in contention. I think he's that good a football player. And, I know you say the NRL's may have or should have concerns over that, but I always think the great issue in our game, Jimmy, one of the great issues we have is rather than encouraging those sides at the bottom to rise, we always want to push the tops. We want to drag people down to the bottom level, and I think it's up to other teams and other clubs to get themselves up to Penrith standard. And look, I think there's some sides who are in that realm. Melbourne's obviously in that realm at the moment. Canberra's done like what Ricky's done in Canberra. He's done an amazing job down there. But I think, if you speak about expansion, Jimmy, and the new clubs coming in, if they're not going to target Penrith players, they're mad. Because you want to get players out of winning systems. Look what the Dolphins did with Melbourne. They just went after the experienced Melbourne guys. I mean, if I'm in Perth or I'm in PNG, I'm looking at some of those guys maybe towards the back end of their career at Penrith, and I'm going hard after them. And I think at some point...
I think Sorensen is on the radar.
Sorensen's an obvious one. The other thing they did was they went and got like a Katoa, the Dolphins. They got the young gun coming through. Penrith will be affected by that, but the fact is their junior system's so big, and they do such a good job at producing footballers that they can lose a couple of blokes and just someone else comes through. And Blaze Talangi's a rarity. They go out and sign a bloke, and Isaiah Papali'i, they go out and sign a bloke and bring him in. They generally have kids coming through who are good enough to play first grade and introduce them into that system. And it takes them a little bit of time, but they're surrounded by such good players, the Yos, the Clearys of the world, that they can afford to take their time to find their feet. And, I just think it's not – the game shouldn't be dragging Penrith down to everyone else's level. It should be it should be dragging everyone up to Penrith's level.
I'm with you. I am with you, but we'll just go back to Penrith quickly. And because this year was supposed to be – and there's a couple of reasons for that is Luai leaves, and the person that they had earmarked for Luai being replaced was Izzy Qatar. And I think that was in the plan. And like you say, they had to go outside this system. They didn't figure anyone else was ready yet, and they got their man, who in Blaise Talangi is now growing in stature, growing in confidence, growing in his ability, his level of understanding of the nuances of Penrith's system and how they defend and how they attack. And again, that's only going to improve. But the other one, James Fisher-Harris, and they didn't plan for that. But obviously, Lindsay Smith stepped up his game. Isaiah Papali'i back to his original best that we've seen him in yesteryear. So
the Oda's playing good football.
Like it's difficult to see this team slowing down, but because of the competition as a whole, really, I mean, you can spin it whatever way you want around dragging everyone down. That's why the salary cap was brought in as an equalizer to stop these almost super teams, to stop teams overspending as well. That was another reason why it was brought in. And we can look and say whether it's dragging, whether you view it as dragging up or dragging down. But to be philosophical, if every team is great, then no team is great. If we've got 17 Penriths, then no one is Penrith. So there is always going to be a disparity of teams' playing ability that is going to be affected by roster, by coaching staff. But
what Penrith do really well, Jimmy, is the cap's affected them. The cap's hit them, right? They've lost Luai. They've lost a host of players over there. Steve Crichton, Viliami Kikau, James Fisher-Harris. But they've always brought guys through. And they do it. That's what they do so well. Or they go and buy someone like a Talangi who didn't cost them the earth. As we said, it took a bit of time for him to find his feet.
And also a bit of a destination club for any young player now. They would go, I'll go there because I want to learn this system. And
he got to play alongside Nathan Cleary, and look what it's doing for his game.
Huge sell. And look, not only what it's doing for his name, he's in the box seat. He's looking at the next window of time or the time span of 3 years and going, I'm on to win one here.
Yeah.
Like, you wouldn't back against that happening. If you got the next 3 seasons, 25, 26, 27, will Penrith win one? You'd go
probably
in all likelihood. So that's a big attraction for a young player like that. But I think I love the way Penrith apply this unemotional approach to their systems and their cap that no doubt would have been excruciatingly difficult to not give Jerome an extra 75 a year. Not give Stephen Crichton an extra 50. Not look at Kikau and go another. Let's just push it 50 this year and 100 the next, and we'll deal with the ramifications later because it's too impactful on the squad. I think, and again, I've been thinking about Penrith and this system and other teams in the mix. I've been thinking a lot about Canberra and how they are the ultimate outlier. Like, Bulldogs have been building for a number of years. I think they're ahead of where they probably would envisage they were at when Cam Serralo first came to the club. I think last year that they skyrocketed, and yes, this year they've improved, and they look like they're going to be strong in the next couple of seasons. The Sydney Roosters, they've had a successful culture for a long time that's yielded results, sort of certainly in my time playing NRL. Melbourne Storm and Penrith, like I say, speak for themselves. But with Canberra, I didn't predict that they go very well this year. Like a lot of people. Take my Bulldogs cap off, right, and how I want them to win the comp. I'm internally conflicted because I think for the good of the comp I think I want the Raiders to win.
It'd be an amazing story, wouldn't it? Because some people had them tipped to win the Spoon this year.
And I'm happily going to admit I was one of those.
It would be an amazing story. And Ricky's done an amazing job there. They're so smart. Their recruitment's been so smart, so clever the way they went about it. I mean, they went out and got Ethan Strange, and they got Tamale, and they got KO Weeks. These guys they're not Canberra blokes. They went and found them.
Yeah.
Got them at other clubs and got them at a young age where they could bring them in and grow with them, and they grew with the team, and they surrounded with really experienced leaders like Tarpanay and Papali, and the way they're built, and Fogarty, right? The way they've built that side, they've gone about it really, because they know Canberra's not a draw card for players generally. But if you give a young kid a chance, you promise a young kid a chance, and importantly, they follow through on that. So other young kids see that they've
Sanders being the ultimate example.
Exactly.
That he looked like he was given the nod for the 7 jersey in 2026, and they're following through with that.
Yeah. So they've done an amazing job down there, and I reckon people have been waiting for them to stumble a bit this year.
Yeah,
but they haven't stumbled. They've had the odd week where they've been off a little bit, but for most of the year, I mean, they've been at a really high level, and it's like they'll potentially have two finals in Canberra at home. They're going to be very hard to beat.
They are. I just think for that blindsided effect that come from nowhere, that belief that it gives every fan of every club in the NRL that we could be the Canberra Raiders next year.
Hope, doesn't it?
It does. If you're currently sitting, if you're a Roosters, Storm, Penrith, you could argue Bulldogs fan as well. Like that top 4, you could say that you're feeling optimistic about your chances. You've seen this coming through history, minus the Dogs for the past few years. But every Dogs fan have been on this road, on this roller coaster, on this rebuild. Team Seraldo, Team Gus, Team DeRusi. It's a lot of feel good factor. If the Dogs won the comp this year, it probably, especially after the early season form, it wouldn't surprise too many. But the Raiders, I think it would do so much for the competition, especially when I mentioned about Penrith and their likelihood of remaining dominant.
Yeah. Well, it's been compared to Leicester City, right, in the Premier League. That's the comparison that's been drawn, Jimmy, that Leicester, no one gave them a chance. How many years ago was that now? A long time ago now.
I've been thinking about this again with Leicester, and let's say the Raiders win it. Which is easier to do, a first past the post or a knockout comp? Because, but it's probably more if the Raiders are if like a team from outside the 8, so outside the 4, and you went, I've just won 4 games at the end of the year, or that sustained, you're winning against battlers first past the post. A couple of teams had shocking years, but if Leicester had a playoff system, like they do here in Australia or in American sports, I don't know if Leicester win the Premier League grand final.
But Canberra could do both, right?
Well,
Canberra could win the minor Premiership,
and
then win the grand final. So you'd have to say that exceeds potentially what Leicester did. Great story.
It
what
really
we do in journalism, Jimmy, we always cheer the story, man. They're the best story, Canberra.
They are the story. And well, for me, I'm cheering competition integrity and belief of fans, but you cheer the story.
Who wins
really.
under that? Who wins under that
like, mantra? How good would it be for? Well, it is part of the story that look what our comp look at these pre-season predictions by the so-called experts. Me being one of them, and look who won it. It would just be great for rugby league. Speaking of pre-season predictions. Great for rugby league. What isn't great is the number of injuries that are currently happening at a really high frequency. It was muted yesterday when I was speaking with some co-workers in at Triple M, maybe about the soft cap being too light and how we shouldn't restrict like a club or the game's ability to invest in the athlete, and maybe that being one of the issues, or even maybe even the lack of studies on collision sport athletes and injury prevention. A lot of sports science studies is conducted on A to B athletes as opposed to athletes in multivariable sports like rugby league, and it's a bit unique rugby league in the like.
But don't you think a lot of it's dumb luck, Jimmy? I mean, look at Penrith at the moment, right? For example, we were talking about Penrith. They got one bloke unavailable, Isaiah Yeo, with a shoulder problem. He could be back this week. Like Souths have got their entire first grade side before this weekend unavailable. Sometimes you just can't help it. You can invest all the money you want in. And I mean, South's the prime example. The last 2 years, I believe South's have done reviews on their injuries. They've looked at the ground. They trained at Heffron Park. Yep. They've looked at all the injury problems they've had. And they've, as a result of that, they've adjusted things. And it hasn't helped because they've just been unlucky. You know, sometimes I think it's just plain dumb luck, Jimmy.
Well, that's not really. You've just been on here.
Look at Jakey getting his head in the wrong spot the other night.
Really, you've just been on here talking, you're cheering the story. Yeah. Now, you know what is not a good story? What? Just bad luck.
You can't do anything about it.
Yeah. Like, that's not cheering.
Sometimes you can't, though, Jimmy. Sometimes, I said Jakey getting his head in the wrong spot. You can maybe teach. You know, I'm not going to criticise Jake Trbojevich's tackle technique because he's been one of the best defenders in the NRL for more than a decade. Like, I would never suggest that Jake needs to work on his tackle technique because he's brilliant. But him sort of getting his head in the wrong spot the other night, that's just luck.
Well,
for me,
okay. So you've gone
a little bit of lapse of judgment, for example.
Yeah.
Right?
So you've gone specifics on an injury like concussion, and definitely when we isolate the incident of Jake Trbojevich, there was an element of maybe an emotional response to try and win back some ascendancy in that contest, and then clearly his head was not aligned where it should be, and you could argue he's exposed himself and put himself in a dangerous spot. But a number of hamstring injuries are occurring over the weekend. I think you really have to dial into the prehab, the rehab, the preparation, the footwear used, the surface. I think there are a number of variables that are part of the causation. We could look at training methods as well. Like, I don't think there's a club that play at a higher intensity than Penrith when they get in that grind, in that cycle of football. Now, you don't just talk about playing at that level of intensity. You don't sit in the meeting room on a Monday and say, hey, next week when we play, they've got the Storm this week. Hey, we should play at a really high intensity. Yeah. And hey, Liam Martin, you know what? I really want you to sprint down on those kick chases and the kick pressure, and what we're going to do with our defense. That's not something that you talk about. That's something that you actually have to live practice. So, and the fact that their numbers in terms of their injuries, their soft tissue ones in particular, maybe there's something to be said for that. I know over the years Cleary's had shoulders, groin, Luai the same, shoulder, and injuries are some just bad luck. But I do think that maybe there's a deep dive that maybe it's the NRL, maybe it's the universities in and around New South Wales or Queensland or wherever that could look at injury-specific studies, because the frequency is far too.
Do it. They do. They've got a doc. They've got the NRL chief medical officer, and they do review. They do an injury review process every year, Jimmy. I don't know what comes of it. I don't know whether they make specific changes. But I mean, you look at a side like Brisbane on the weekend, I would suggest they spend probably more money or as much money as anyone off the field in terms of their athletes, their players. You look at their centre of excellence. I mean, it's cutting-edge stuff, right? And again, I mean, there's got to be an element of luck.
Yeah,
bad luck. Two blokes to the hammies in one movement.
Of course.
And Adams, what, 35 now? Being a bit vulnerable to that sort of stuff in recent years. I don't know whether I'm sure, Madge isn't silly, right? I mean, I know Madge gets a hard run for flogging players but Madge isn't silly. He's got sports conditioning people who advise him about loads and all that sort of stuff. And I'm got no doubt Madge listens to them. So, I just think there's an element of And the other element to it, Jimmy, is maybe the game's so fast now that you're going to have more. This is going to happen more frequently.
It's a byproduct of the week to week competition, and maybe the competition structure that with new teams coming in, it can't be as heavy as what it is, or maybe again when they've changed rules to bring in more fatigue. It's had a positive effect in one area, but a disproportionately negative effect when it comes to soft tissue injuries. I think maybe there's something to look at and observe there. It's because we don't want to see our stars out of the game, and even maybe look, this may be deemed as being controversial, and you go, well, where is the line? Around things like the enhanced games and some of that, not performance enhancing, and I need to be clear here, but because there's a big difference between a performance enhancing, and you could argue this is, people may say you're being, what's a word, where you sort of contradict yourself. Contradictory. Yeah. Performance enhancing versus injury preventing.
You're splitting hairs a little bit.
Yes. Now, if you use an injury preventer, is that the same as using a performance enhancer? People go, well, yes.
Well, ultimately, WADA decides that, the World Anti-Doping Agency.
Yes. Unfortunately, we are. I am glad we are again bound by WADA, but maybe there is something there worth exploring, because the frequency of injury for me is too high. I've gone on a slight tangent there, but there's certainly it's not good for the game. It's not good for the sport. It's certainly not good for the fans. Nobody wants to see it.
But again, Jimmy, I go back to a club like Penrith that don't have a lot of injuries at the moment, and go, well, why are they where they are at this point in the season, and Brisbane are having blokes that drop like flies? There's got to be a reason for that. Yeah, does there not?
That's worth, when you talk about dragging everybody down, maybe Penrith need to let us know about what they're doing, or there's people within that system that can go and spread the gospel. Yeah. On Brisbane, it's bizarrely reported, because I was at that game and the observation was, Reynolds looks bad, really bad. Yeah. The sniper got him good. And Ezra Mam, he might be able to stay on. He's doing a bit of a test. Oh, no, but that didn't look as bad. Now, Cobbo as well, probably that didn't even look like a hamstring, but it looked nasty. But reports are Reynolds 3 to 4, Cobbo and Mam 6 weeks each. Yeah. Before we get into that injury, actually, I've got to say, Selwyn Cobbo, for the doubters, that try save on Xavier Coates. Brilliant. Wow, brilliant. Yeah. Those are the types of plays that make him, he's known as an elite footballer with the ball, probably not so much on those effort areas, but that was as good as it gets.
This is the frustration with Selwyn Cobbo though, right? Because he comes up with moments like that, and in some games he's just nigh unstoppable, and then there's other games where you look at him and go, is he really putting in today? That's the frustration of Selwyn Cobbo. When he plays like he did the other night, Jimmy, he's elite, right? He's an Origin standard player, and he's in that Brisbane team every day of the week. But the problem with him has been that he hasn't always played at that level. Yeah, and that's what he has to resolve if he wants to fulfil his potential. I mean, he has to find a way to be at that level every week, because when he's at that level, he's an elite footballer.
And like I say, that
was an amazing try saver.
That chase down of Xavier Coates. Yeah, Coates got he wasn't like a clean sprint away. He got some help along the way with some would-be defenders, but like Cobbo chased down a lost cause there. Yeah. And that was, like I say, as good as it gets in terms of try saves, given the magnitude of the game, the opposition player, which was Xavier Coates, and how he can he's arguably the best finisher in the game. So, but Brisbane Broncos, I guess they've dropped a couple of wingers, so that shouldn't be too much of an issue to fill that void left by Cobbo. but you lose your 6 and your 7. Logically you go, well, Ben Hunt will leave the 9. He'll play 7. Who do you think takes over from Ezra Mann? Because there are a number of options that are available to the Broncos.
Yeah. Well, Billy Walters is a logical one.
Is he?
Well, I'd probably stick Staggs in there. He played there the other night. He's a threat. And the more he gets his hands on the ball, the more damaging he can be. So I'm not sure which way they'll go. I suspect they'll lean towards Billy Walters, but I'd be sticking...
Why Billy Walters? I don't understand.
He played in the halves, I guess. It's a logical one. What would you go, Jimmy? I'd be sticking Staggs in there, saying just run the ball, buddy.
Well, obviously, so your 9 and your second 9 become your halves, and you create 2 more problems there. Now, there's 2 problems to solve, and obviously, if you bring Staggs in, then you've got another problem to solve in who your other outside backs are. But the Brisbane Broncos stocks in the outside backs are actually okay, and like I say, they drop those 2 wingers. Maybe a little bit of a reshuffle if Staggs goes in there. I do think he needs more ball, but in what areas of the field does that, again, take away more? But maybe a Jock Madden just to partner Ben Hunt.
I don't think, is he back yet from that pec problem? He had that pectoral injury. I mentioned him the other day and someone said to me they didn't think he was back yet. Well, maybe, so I'm not sure if he's back yet, Jock Madden.
Yeah, I mean...
They got the young kid, Kobe Black, the young under-19s, played for Queensland under-19s few weeks ago. Huge raps on him for a long time, but I don't know whether it's too early to put him in at this point of the season or too early for him.
I think you need proven first graders. That would be, unless it's Kobe Black is Sualihi jumping out of the skin to get out and play first grade like he was. Unless he's in that category of individual, or it's absolute desperate stocks, I think Maguire will go with a NRL experienced player. So there's merit there with Walters, but if he goes to 6, who goes to 9? Is Mose back or Smoothie?
No, Mose is out the year, I think. I think Corey Pakes might be back.
Corey, yeah.
I think. You keep talking, Jimmy. I'll check that.
I'm
pretty sure he might be back. But if he's back, that's a logical one for them, right? They stick him at hooker.
Yeah.
You stick... Although the thing you lose with Billy Walters is he's been so good coming off the bench.
He's been elite.
He's been brilliant for them.
Really has.
He's been outstanding. So you would lose that, which is a problem. So
I mean,
that's another reason to put Staggs potentially at 6 because you can leave Billy Walters potentially that guy coming off the bench where he's had a real impact this year, created havoc when he's come on, and
your back 5 obviously Walsh could be Karapani.
Corey Pakes is back. So Corey Pakes is available.
But if you move Staggs in, you back 5 Walsh, Karapani, Mariner, Arthurs, and Shibasaki.
Yep.
So you've got room to move with Staggs potentially going into 5'8", but this, do you think Brisbane are going to lean on this as maybe an excuse? And obviously, like we've said, a lot of teams suffering in the injury department, but are Brisbane within their rights to lean on this and in the end say, I think they still will make the 8 if they, we don't know who else is going to be in that makeup, but it's difficult to see them kicking on from this situation.
Madge is not really an excuses kind of guy.
No,
I reckon.
It's not publicly, but when he presents to the board.
Well,
or is this going to be the media fallout? Is if they had Reynolds,
yeah. But I mean, you can go back to the start of the season when they lost games early in the year and point to that as well. That's what's hurting them at the moment. They should be entrenched in the top 8, but they lost games sort of early part of the year and took them a while to string things together. I think they were always going to be better next year than this year, Brisbane, just because they've had a year under Madge. But I mean, knowing Madge, he doesn't cop excuses. He's never copped excuses. I mean, he'll expect them to go out and perform this week, and they've still got enough talent.
Yeah.
Look at that football team; it's still there's still, Haas, Carrigan. You're talking Shibasaki, an Origin player, Ben Hunt. Ben Hunt's a good halfback. We know that, right? So
Well, I guess this is the point. I asked you whether you'd use excuses. You're saying no. Will anyone, the fans, cop those excuses?
No.
I'm with you. I don't think there'll be any sympathy with a roster that has Reece Walsh, Ben Hunt in the spine. Like you say, the forward, the 1-2 punch of Haas and Carrigan, like throw Staggs in the mix as well.
Yeah.
Like it's
still a decent.
It's a rival. Team. It's a rival roster.
Yeah, and once they get there, they get Adam Reynolds back. The finals, they're a different footy team again. So they just got to make sure they get there, Jimmy. That's going to be their challenge.
They'll get there.
You got them in
surely.
There? Yeah, well, they should make it from where they are.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They're in a good position to make it. Opposite end of the table, the SpoonBowl. Now, Alex Johnson scores early in the piece, South's first good ball set, and we called this game for Triple M, and we were thinking, we hope the NRL have got all the banners, all the golden.
He needed 5, didn't he, or something?
Well, I think he needed 5 to break the record, but mate, he scored after 2 minutes. It's the Titans against Souths. We thought we just hope it's just in case situation, and then probably about 13, 15 minutes before half time, there was a bit of a back and forth, bit more cycle football, bit of a grind style. Certainly second half, beginning of it was in that same sense, and both teams taking penalties. Latrell Mitchell with a great try save, Jaden Campbell, but just lack of urgency. But the focus of that game is going to be put on Jaden Campbell. Final moment of the game, it appeared there was high contact on him from one of the Souths players. He elects to play the ball. Souths defend the play, and game's over. But Jaden Campbell,
it's probably a penalty, right? It should have been a penalty. Right in front, should have gone to golden point.
Yeah.
If Jaden Campbell stays down, he probably gets a penalty.
What message really does that send to the NRL?
Well, to the rest, you mean the other
to the rest of the players?
Well, probably again encourages players to stand down. Or I will say there are a few incidents on the weekend when blokes stayed down, and the NRL, when the bunker looked at it and ruled play on.
Yeah.
I'm not 100% convinced it was a penalty. I thought it was maybe if it had gone to the bunker, it was one of those ones where there were mitigating circumstances. It was sort of incidental contact. Maybe it's not a penalty, Jimmy. Look, I'm sure they'll probably say, yeah, he got him high, and it probably should have been a penalty. But I'm just saying, I think we saw at the weekend, what I've liked to see is when players stay down, and there were some really obvious ones, pathetic really. I mean, this is one of my bugbears. I know a lot of fans hate it, right? And I think ultimately it comes back to it's an individual. The onus is on the individual in this situation. I'd be embarrassed if I stayed down like some of the players in the modern game stay down. I think it's embarrassing, and I'm glad the bunker is now not giving penalties for it.
Yeah.
But I would say the other thing out of that game, Jimmy, is the difference Latrell Mitchell makes to South Sydney. Some of the plays he came up with, he is such you just can't take your eyes off him when he plays. He's like a magnet.
Yeah.
And
I wonder if centres, I know obviously back from injury.
Yeah.
In the centres.
Wayne's been pretty, like when he was fit, Wayne was pretty vehement that he was his fullback.
Yeah.
Now obviously he's just come back. It's taken a bit of load off him. And Jai Grace had a pretty good year. But I reckon there was a couple of times in that game that I thought Jai Gray, that they created a bit of space, and if it was Latrell on the end of it, he probably scores just because he's a bigger physical presence. Whilst Jai, he doesn't have that same size and physical side.
He's not as
he's not as powerful,
Mitchell is
right?
an incredibly powerful athlete. I enjoyed that battle with him and Jojo Fafita for a bit of time there. That was two very strong human beings going after each other.
But Jai Gray does something for you that Latrell can't do, right?
Exactly, yeah.
I'm sorry, I changed the subject then.
No.
Do you want to talk about the Jaden Campbell incident a bit more?
I do, yeah, because
I hate players starting.
I know, and so do I really. But you know what?
I reckon last time I was here, we talked about the same thing. I can't remember who it was.
But really, you know what? If he does stay down, right, he gets the penalty, goes to golden point, and who knows what happens. I imagine.
Do you think, Jimmy? So he's obviously got up, right? Because the contact was so minimal.
Yeah,
it didn't affect him. That's probably. I don't think that's a penalty. You shouldn't give a penalty for that.
Well, let's just say he does stay down, right? I think now there's too much interference from the bunker. I would like to see it. Just if the referee misses it, that's what we have to live with. Now I know this isn't
unless
perfect.
It's a glaring howler.
Well, not even a glaring. So you
got to get the howlers.
Unless it's a sin binnable offence, not an on report offence, because too many times we see it. Jai Arrow, he was my 3 points on Triple M. I thought he was fantastic. He tried to stay down. He didn't have to get removed from the field as well, which I think is something the NRL needs to look at. If you're going to stay down, hey, no Cat 1, no Cat 2, you've stayed down. We've got to treat this with the utmost seriousness. Like, if you're down, you're off and you ain't coming back on.
You want the clown?
I'd love the clowns to come on and stretch you off. But I think unless it's a sin binnable or send-off offence, like, so remember, speaking of Latrell, on Joey Manu a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
Like that, things happen so fast. Surely he in State of Origin, things were happening and I get that. So unless it's a sin binnable or send off offence, none of this on report stuff. Like a lot of the time, that just leads to fines, and you're stopping the game for that. Like it, unfortunately, the players are playing into the environment that's been created, and even if Jaden Campbell stays down, right? There's no lack of integrity on Jaden Campbell, because he's just another one in a list of 1,000 this year.
But the sad part is, Jimmy, we're all sitting here going, he probably should have stayed down. That's sad for our game.
It is sad because a lot of people because are you the ultimate competitor, the ultimate winner, or are you a person of integrity?
Yeah,
and they don't have to be mutually exclusive. But if Jaden Campbell were to have stayed down and the game goes to goal, no one is questioning him. It's just like not one person questions Jaden Campbell's integrity, and nor should they. But it's because it's the rules of engagement. It
depends how much he put it on. You know, sometimes blokes put it on. It's really obvious.
Well,
he probably in that situation, given he wasn't hurt, he'd have probably had to put it on, and it would have been pretty. Like it's obvious when blokes are feigning. Don't you think I find it really obvious.
Yeah,
and that's why fans hate it. So if Jaden Campbell had stayed down there, it clearly didn't affect him.
Yeah,
he would have had to put on a real acting performance. And I reckon you're saying it wouldn't affect his integrity. I reckon if he'd put that acting performance on, it would have been obvious to everyone, and people would have gone, "But that's pathetic."
Know what? It'd be 5 minutes of social media reaction from South fans, and then it gets washed in the cycle, and he's just another NRL player that would have stayed down for a penalty.
We should congratulate him. Good on him.
Well,
good on you, Jaden.
Good on Jaden. But then is that what Coach Hasler's saying to him?
No,
is that
he's coaching for his life?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Because there was a lot riding on that game.
Yeah.
We will get into our instant classic right now, Reedy. They are a huge supporter of the show. Check the link in the bio for some amazing deals. Become a classic VIP member today. And we've also got something very cool about to drop. We are just waiting for the final tick of approval from Classic before we can reveal. But don't just think that Classic do NRL, Super Rugby, International Rugby. They've got stuff for grassroots as well. So make sure you do check out that link that is in the bio, or Google or whatever search engine you use. Get onto Classic Sportswear. They are the best in the business. It was the Eels' 1 point victory against the Cowboys. The Fox, they just couldn't stop scoring down that left edge. Cowboys right edge in all sorts again, and then Mitchell Moses with that magnificent field goal.
He's been a great signing for them, the Fox. Obviously, was on the lookout for a club in the off season. He caught up with him. I think he went and visited Riles at his house in the Gong, and he promised Riles he wouldn't let him down. I tell you what, he's lived up to his end of the bargain, because he's been outstanding for them this year. The Fox. I mean, there's plenty of life left in him. And Mitch, Mitch has just been when Mitch plays, there a chance every week. He's that good a footballer. Definitely
the most influential player for a team's chance of victory. He did have some choice words.
He did. He's compared to Mitch.
Well, I'm happy for it. As long as there's an understanding between the players that this isn't personal, this is just business.
Well, you know this better than me, Jimmy, because you obviously captain footy teams. You would have sprayed blokes on the field?
Many a time. And people sprayed me, and that was part of it. I guess, you know, it's delicate that there's an imbalance of power there with Da Silva new to the club in the spine and Moses being the skipper. And look, Moses has earned the right to do that. So if Moses made a mistake, I wouldn't expect Tallyn da Silva to give Moses such a spray. There's a hierarchy there, and rightly so, and that's how it should be. But you've got to, as long as Tallyn da Silva knows that the place that Mitchell Moses is coming from, that he's demanding excellence. He's not demanding perfection, but he's demanding excellence, and he's demanding that, you know, this is all. And I think this comes from the place that you've got to know that I'm your man here. And if I want the ball, I get the ball. You don't go off script. And he went off script a couple of times there, and it can look quite confronting on TV, seeing people argue and blow up, especially when there is that, I guess, that pecking order or that hierarchy. You know, if in a lot of workplaces, if one of the leaders yells at one of the new guys, it's like, oh no, it's what would it be? Bullying or abuse of power or whatever it may be. But I think in this instance, it's needed, and it's part of professional sport.
I'm sure Mitch would have pulled him aside after the game, had a word to him and said, mate, what you said, when I want the ball, you got to get me the ball. I mean, this is, you can't be going off script. You can't be doing your own thing, right? At points in games, maybe you can. When the game's in the balance like that, you know, you need the ball in the hands of your best player, and your best player is Mitchell Moses, and he's your captain. So if he wants it, it's your job to get it to him.
And I think as well, the fact that Tallyn da Silva will know it's not personal is evidence that Mitchell Moses has done this before. He blows up at his players around him. He's very demanding of his teammates, and I think that's a good thing. Coach Payten had some interesting words about Mitch Moses in the press conference, sort of pointed a slight finger in the direction of him and saying he's got history in this way. But for me, you couldn't have awarded that try.
Oh, at the end of the game, yeah. No, is he suggesting he dived? Or
he made mention of that he dove, and then he sort of went back at it a couple of minutes later and said, oh, you know, I was just in jest, that was just a joke. Yeah. But then he did say, Mitch does have form again. And it's like, oh.
I didn't think it was a dive. I think that was a penalty every day of the week.
Look, I think it's a penalty because he caught the ball on the inside for one, and there is contact there, but let's compare Jaden Campbell with Mitchell Moses. If Mitchell Moses was offered $1 million to make that play, I think he makes that play.
In the Gold Coast game?
No. Mitchell Moses in the Para game.
Yeah.
If Mitchell Moses offered $1 million to make that tackle and to double D and slide off, I think he makes that play.
Yeah.
But he doesn't need to.
No.
He plays the environment that's in front of him. He plays the situation. He plays the cards that he's dealt, where Jaden Campbell doesn't. So Mitchell Moses gets criticism from an opposition coach. Jaden Campbell, you know, gets applause from people that
like us.
Yeah,
I don't know. I think they're different situations.
Well, they are, but is that the winner of Mitchell Moses versus the inexperience or the good nature?
I'm not as cynical about what Mitch Moses did. I think
no, but like you say, I think he could have made that play, but regardless, it wasn't. It shouldn't have been given.
No, yeah, I don't necessarily agree. I reckon Mitch's.
You telling me you don't think he could have stayed up there and made that tackle?
Maybe he could have, Jimmy, but it would have been difficult.
Yeah, it would have been difficult, but like I say, if there's $1 million on the line, he makes it.
Yeah, well, potentially, yeah. But I think there's I don't know. I think the situations they're different. It's different sort of incidents, different plays, obviously. And mate, I reckon Mitch's. I don't have an issue with what Mitch did. No,
and neither do I.
Nor do I have an issue with what Jaden Campbell did. So I'm happy with both of them.
Or would have done, or could have done.
No, if Jaden Campbell had stayed down, I might have had an issue with that.
But he's just another in the long list.
Of blokes staying down?
Yeah.
Don't be on the list. Don't be on that. I wouldn't want to be on that list. You don't want to be on that list. That's a bad list.
We need to start writing these lists
Yeah,
down.
we need to. You know what? You should keep a shame file.
Shame file.
Shame file of footballers who take dives. I want to do that next year.
I like
Let's
that.
put them on notice, Jimmy.
Yeah, put it on. Yeah.
Next year we're going to take a shame file of footballers who take unnecessary dives.
Okay.
And play act and stay down.
Yeah, and just promote
What do we do? Actually, you know what? I'm going to do it on the run. We'll do it on the run home. A shame file.
Let's do it.
I won't be on, but you can flash it up.
With Payten and those comments, is that a sign of a man under pressure, like immense pressure?
There's no doubt he's under immense pressure. I mean, they've been awful all year, particularly in the last 3.5 months. They've been diabolical. I think they've had 3 wins. They've been against teams they probably should have won against. He's under immense pressure, and I'm sure he knows that, because how can you not know that when the team's playing like they are? I mean, the thing about Toddy is they made the second week of the finals last year. That's what everyone seems to have forgotten. So he's got a little bit of credit in the bank. But, geez, their performances in the past 3 months, a lot of that credit's sort of been washed away because they've been so poor defensively. And you look at that team.
Defense is.
You look at that team, that team's not that bad. When you run through it.
If Coach Payten is to part ways with them, like when the power brokers, or if the power brokers approach a number of coaches, this isn't a rebuild. No. This isn't a how can we, what moves are we going to have to play here? This is a what can you do to change this roster? Yes. That is the question that will be asked. What can you do with this roster?
Yeah. It just needs cosmetic. That roster needs some minor tinkering. It doesn't need anything other than that.
Well, the question that the Cowboys have to ask is Payten the man to do it, or can he do that? And he should be afforded some runway, because this time 12 months ago they were in the 8, and like you say, they went into finals and they won that first game. If Payten does go, people, again, I take this with a grain of salt, but they say, they don't like making difficult decisions at the Cowboys and having those confrontational moments.
I think the view is up. The view of that board is that not that they don't like making difficult decisions, Jimmy, just that they're conservative and they're patient. They're just not going to make a knee-jerk reaction. They'll think about it. They'll think about it deeply before they make a move like that.
Yeah.
Which I think, I don't have an issue with that. Like, if you're going to make a huge decision like that, I prefer to act on the side of caution rather than just willy-nilly sack a bloke just because everyone wants the bloke sacked.
Do they then potentially miss out on their number one target if that is the case?
But there's no, in the current environment, I don't think there's a Cameron Cireldo out there that you go, got to get him. Obviously Josh Hannah's the name that's on everyone's lips, right? And he's obviously got history with the Cowboys. But if you miss Josh, Willie Peters is out there. Brad Arthur just did a new deal at Leeds, but he'd have an out clause of some description in there. So there are other options out there. When you look beyond, Dean Young's got history at the Cowboys. Ben Hornby's at South. There's a hope.
But still, if you're going to move your coach on, you want the best.
Yeah, but there's no definitive best coach at the moment. Well, I don't.
Yeah, there's a group of about 10, isn't there? You throw Ben Teo into the mix.
Benny Teo,
and with what he's building at the Broncos, the lessons that he's had from his footballing career as well, like that adds to his bow.
Sammy Burgess.
One guy that's not been spoken about that for me is a little bit of a no-brainer in this is Chad Randall.
Chad, yeah,
because
he's done a great apprenticeship too.
Like, he's the defense coach at the Dogs, and if you look at what the Cowboys need, it's defense. So
Chad is an interesting one when they talk about a succession plan at Manly, right? I mean, that he coached at Manly. He was there for a long time, played there, obviously. But, everyone's talked about Mick Ennis, and he's obviously the favourite to eventually succeed Siebes if it goes down that path, a succession plan. But if not Mick Ennis, Chad Randall should be next in line.
Yeah, I'm purely basing this off, Melbourne. People have been with Coach Bellamy, and obviously that is a big draw card for clubs. They go, we can cherry pick those ideas. We've seen Penrith and their coaching staff have the eyeballs picked out of them. And look, I want Chad to continue at the Bulldogs, but if you're a club, if I'm one of the decision makers at another football club, I'm looking at what the Bulldogs have done defensively and how their systems have been learned over the past 3 seasons and going, who implemented that? Well, one, it was Ciraldo. Can we get him? Unlikely. We wouldn't be able to afford him, and no way he'd leave. Well, what's the next best option? Who knows the workings of that system? It's not Chad's system. It's Ciraldo's system, but he knows it better than you could argue anyone. Maybe you could say Ivan as well, the other staff at the Penrith Panthers, but he's up there in the top, I guess, echelon of people with knowledge of how that system works.
Well, there's another guy we haven't spoken about at Penrith, Peter Wallace. I mean, Pete's been on the coaching staff at Penrith for a few years now. No one talks about Peter Wallace, but Benny Gardner's obviously going to go to Perth and be the successor to Mel Meninga over there. Ciraldo was there. Look at the coaches that have come through that Penrith system. Peter Wallace is probably the next guy to come through that system.
Well, no one spoke about Andrew Webster, did they?
No.
It was a smart move from the Warriors. Really intelligent play to get him and not be maybe swayed by media or swayed by emotion of a former player or this apprenticeship or obviously Webster did his apprenticeship there, but they weren't swayed too much on emotion or stature in the game. But look, it's an unfortunate aspect of the game that coaches get sacked and we have to talk about it. But I'm personally of the opinion that I think all coaches should survive this year. But that said, the spotlight is ready and the firing line and the laser beams are being fine-tuned and the sights are being, just set up because there's if everyone stays, there's going to be a big fall next year if those teams that are in the spotlight don't yield positive results.
Yeah. There's a few coaches, if they survive, would be under the opening 8 to 10 weeks of next year, they'll be just in the crosshairs.
Yeah.
And do you want to start a year like that as a football club?
Well, you don't, but it's part of what comes with it. And even when you consider not just the extra pressure on results going into the beginning of the season, the fact that Perth Bears around the corner, and instability around coaches, it's an easier out for players, especially players that you might want to keep. So if you're the Newcastles, the Cowboys of the world, if you've got players you want to keep and you don't know who your coach is and you don't act quickly, then all of a sudden Perth come knocking. You're an unstable club. Hey, here's our stability of Mal Meninga. Here's our plan. You can see yourself being attracted to that.
Yeah. Well,
Just finally, Bulldogs big win. I guess a bit of an issue there around whether or not they could play in the rain. They beat an under.
What did you make of that? Look, Ciraldo seemed to have fun sort of shooting that down.
Well, I think
because there had been a lot of talk they couldn't win in wet weather. Which seemed bizarre.
Yeah, I think there is other evidence that I think they played the Roosters and beat them in the rain. But for me, it's better to get those lessons now than get caught in a rainy day in September and not know that things maybe do need to change. But if you look at how the Bulldogs attacked, they were still moving the football a lot. Like, the old wet weather football isn't what it used to be.
It's a good time to get the Warriors, though. Just with their injury problems.
Well, yeah, but Fisher Harris was back. That was an all-in play.
They lost Tamari.
Yeah, they
didn't
did.
So,
they did.
It was a good time to get them. If you're going to play someone in the wet, it was a good time to play the Warriors in the wet because they're battling a bit. I mean, as we spoke about them earlier, there's every chance they could slide out the 8 the way they're going. I mean, they're in that bad a nick with that many injuries and. Andrew Webster's done Andrew Webster would have been coach of the year a month ago.
Yeah.
But now
and Ricky.
No, Ricky, of course, sorry. Andrew Webster would have been runner-up to Ricky for Coach of the Year.
And
but now
that excludes Seraldo, that excludes, obviously,
Craig,
and it excludes, Ivan.
Yeah. So that was a month ago, but a lot can change in rugby league, Jimmy.
It sure can.
Suddenly the Bulldogs can win in the wet, and the Wales win all sorts. Easy game.
All right, brilliant. Reedy, thank you so much for joining us here on the Bye Round. We will catch you all midweek. I am out midweek, I believe, at this stage. I've got a little surgery happening.
Good luck, Jimmy.
Thanks, mate. Yeah. I'm going to get on the front foot because I know Charlie's going to get into me about this. So I'm getting my varicose veins removed, and I'm fine with that. So whatever Charlie's got to say about my varicose veins, and he's going to say it's vanity. It's not. It's for pure health reasons. So up yours, Charlie White. Catch you all Wednesday, where no doubt Charlie will be celebrating his epic run in the City to Surf and putting unnecessary grief on me for my vein reasons.
You'll be right, Jimmy. You'll get through it, mate.
You know what? Really,
you worried?
No, mate. Has there ever been a situation in life where you think I should have worried more?
No.
I hate worry.
Okay.
And also, I love going under.
Seriously?
Oh,
do you really?
My God. There is not many better feelings than sat on that bed. I mean...
And drifting off.
And just... Ooh.
And knowing you wake up and you'll have no more varicose veins.
No more, yeah, exactly, yeah. But, no, I love... I enjoy going under. I absolutely think it's the best thing ever. Well, not the best thing ever, but you know what I mean. It is pretty cool. All right, we'll catch you all next week.